of course, am joined here by the one and only Uncle Lou, Farmer Lou. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well, brother. How are you doing this weekend? How was your weekend? How was everything that transpired this glorious weekend, you know?
This weekend was nice. I don't think that I did anything that spectacular. Unfortunately, I didn't have a car for most of the week, and I didn't get it back until Friday afternoon.
Okay.
So I didn't really do much Saturday. I kind of just chilled, cleaned up around the house, did some editing and stuff like
You know
that.
what? Editing is important. Low key is important.
Yeah,
Rest and relaxation sometimes. Recharge those batteries before the holiday comes up.
that's
You
right.
know?
I've been looking for a new place to live. I'm doing a lot of different things. But I did want to mention that we did have a great time last week.
Yeah, we did.
We went up to where was it? Rocky Hill,
Yep.
and we got to see Aaron, Lisa, and Uzma,
Yep.
th-
Yep.
three of the great healers, and they put on a really nice presentation. The three of them.
Great presentation, Joe, and it was received by a room full of professionals
Mm-hmm.
in an advocacy setting. So
Yep.
it was there was a lot of good energy in the space. There was a lot of education. There
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of like-minded individuals.
Yep. A lot of good questions came
A
from the
lot of good
audience.
questions. Yep, yep.
Yep.
So
And then
that
it
was a beautiful thing.
was really nice to see. It was a place called Advocacy Unlimited. So they got
Advocacy
a lot. Yeah,
Unlimited. That's right.
yeah, they got a lot of good stuff going on up there. It was an interesting place. They gave us a tour. It was nice, very very nice. It was good to see though, and it was good to see cannabis out there in the
Yep.
more mainstream type of community, and they did a really really good job. So.
And again, super mainstream. It was continuing education credits for
Mm-hmm.
the medical professionals. It was really awesome to see that people are embracing this, not just from the advocacy side, but from the education side, from the professional side. So it's a good thing.
Absolutely,
How's Kristen doing
absolutely.
over in her corner?
Yeah, Kristen, how you doing over there in the corner? Your corner has changed.
It's decorated for the holidays now. I've been
Well,
hanging
where's
out in
the
the living room.
tree? I see snowmen.
I'm not spinning this around my messy house, but the tree is there.
Okay,
You
very,
clean
very
one
cool.
corner and then you just film from there. Don't you know the tricks?
Yeah, I do. This is where do you think I'm at right now? I just happen
The
to have a
rest of the
green
house looks like a
screen.
tornado went
You
off.
don't want to know what's behind me. Anyway.
But I am good. I feel like the weekend freaking flew by. I'm like, yesterday I was acting like it was Saturday all day. I was like, oh, that's upsetting, but
Hmm. Oh, you skipped a day, huh?
I guess so. I
Well, that's
guess
what the
so.
tree can do for you. So,
Yes, I got the Christmas tree. That is what I did this weekend.
very, very nice. Well, it's always nice to have a live Christmas tree. I always end up with one of those about this high, little fake one, like Charlie Brown Christmas.
I do the Charlie Brown Christmas tree every year, Joe. It's
I
just
do
me,
too.
and that's I guess that's the as we break into more personal information, but that's the life of a divorced man that doesn't really have too
And a
much. You
single
know what I
guy.
mean? I have
Yeah.
my Christmas tree is a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree. I usually get it from last couple of years. There's been Jones's Family Farm. This year, Killingsworth up in Running Brook Farm. I just get like somebody who they
They
cut the
clip
top
the
of the
top.
tree. Yeah, they like as they clip the top of other large trees. I kind of get the
Yep.
little piece of that, and then I put it up on a little stand, and that becomes my Christmas tree. So that when my kids come over, they can at least see that part. My kids throw the little fit, but Dad doesn't really celebrate. I was like, I just don't do all the extra stuff because it's just me.
Yeah, me too. I just do the same thing just for the sake of it, to have a tree around, you know what I
Yep.
mean? I have a couple little ornaments I put on there, and that's it. And that's the only thing I really have to remind me of Christmas.
Yeah,
My
and
inner Martha Stewart comes out this time of year. Go on Pinterest. You can go outside and forage greenery and make all sorts of fun crap.
that's right. It's nice
That's
when you
good.
can, and then it's
Yeah.
tough. And this is when we're reminded about certain things, and you're reminded that you're we want to make sure we're out so that we don't sit inside and dwell on being alone.
Yes.
So those are those little things that you're like, and then I've been a nomad for so long that I've been in just like you, Joe. I've been in a
Yep.
different living situation every year for the last 5 years. So to carry around a lot of that stuff, other than just keeping a small shoebox worth of holiday stuff is more than you really have sometimes,
Yeah,
That's perfect.
I have my original stocking
There you go,
from when
Joe.
I was a child.
There you
That's the
go.
only thing I've carried from my childhood. All those decorations we used to have. Obviously, my mother passed. We had to get rid of all that kind of family stuff.
Yeah.
That was part of the tradition, and so like you say, now without the family, you're a single guy. It's a different ballgame. And Kristen, I'm sure you're the opposite. Now you got the family, so you got to do the whole deal.
To
And
be
her
honest, it's
kid
a
is
little weird. Like Michaela's 21, she's at college and's got her friends and doing her thing. So she does come home, but like she's 21, she's out and hanging out with the boyfriend. And Brianna is giving me a run for my money in the parenting category. I'll just leave it at that. So she's a challenge right now.
that's
I called my mom
awesome.
just like, this is my karma.
Karma, I was gonna just say
Michaela was
that.
easy. Brianna is a reminder from the universe that I really was a tough kid and it's coming back.
The
God
mirror.
help me.
You have the mirror effect with your
I can't
child.
use Santa as an excuse anymore. I'm like, Santa's not coming. I don't care. Like,
Then you just say, good, then I'm not giving you nothing. How about that? No.
I don't exactly subscribe to gentle parenting, but I'm like trying not to be a total banshee, and I just lost it recently. I was like, oh god, I can't do this.
That's awesome.
It's all that
Telling
Taylor
ya.
Swift music she's been listening to.
No, she
Make
doesn't
her-
even like Taylor Swift. It's me and the older one.
That's
All
awesome.
right.
Yeah, I know that all too well. Now my daughter's like, well, it's time for dad to go into his corner and medicate.
Like,
I'm like, yeah,
Go
leave me
away.
alone.
Go away,
like
Daddy.
seriously.
Go away, Daddy. You're right.
Go away, dad. I'm
So
like,
She's gonna
oh
do your
man.
corner for a timeout you want, you know?
Yeah, at least it's a timeout I want, at least, right? That's the thing.
That is true.
She's looking out for your mental health. I appreciate it.
That's right. And it's good to have a teenage daughter. He's aware, at least. She
Yeah,
knows what you're up
teenagers
to.
are an interesting group of folks. They're people, but they are
Well,
interesting.
I gotta
little
say, I
people.
was no prize teenager. I was,
Yeah.
I was
No.
a sweet kid. I was a really nice little kid, but something around age 13 happened, and I just flipped the switch, and
Yeah,
I
your
just
balls
became.
dropped.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh my god.
And I just
Like a
flipped the
puppy.
switch into this, me. I don't know. Anyway,
Joe found weed.
weed and booze, cigarettes, all that stuff. Oh, it all came at one time. Anyway.
Yup.
That's
Yep.
exactly. Joe, you're talking to the choir right here.
That's
Yep.
right.
I'm
So
singing the
back in
song.
those days, you know how easy it was to buy cigarettes at
Oh,
13?
dude. Oh my God. I used to get them for 75 cents a pack. I was 13 years old.
Oh yeah, it was like $1.50 a pack by the time I was a kid.
You walk right in, and it was this old guy, and everybody knew you could go there and buy cigarettes because he was this old guy, and he just didn't care. He would sell you the things, and I'll never forget. We just buy cigarettes, no problem. 13 years
It's
old.
ridiculous thinking about it. Like I grew up in Cheshire. It's a little foo-foo there, but we'd go into Waterbury and there was like this corner shop deli like right on the line. Dude was like selling like 40s of Old English to like I don't look that old now. I sure as hell didn't when I was 12. Like this dude's really just giving us beer and like a loose cigarette.
Yeah,
Lucy's right. Yeah, Lucy.
there you go. I would
Good old
walk into the
times.
bodega. I was in New York City, so it was
You
Brooklyn.
could get whatever you wanted.
Yeah, I'd walk into the corner store and Poppy, because these were bodegas. Now they call them the Aki spots, but now no, this was a bodega.
Now they're called dispensaries.
Yeah, I'd walk right into the bodega and I'd be like, "Yo, mommy wants a a handle of this and pack of cigarettes, and you leave with cigarettes, weed, and a fucking bottle of booze from the bottom
Right?
counter. You know, like they was fucking. There were those pints sitting there. You know.
It's wild.
It was wild. Those were the days, We kind of grew up in a little more wilder times, But again, if you know what you're doing and you know where to go, even these days, that's still available.
For sure.
You know,
A
But
little
we
outside
don't
of that
advocate
realm.
anywhere. We don't advocate any young
right. We
Christian
don't
to be doing
advocate
any of that.
underage
No.
doing anything. Underage
That's right.
We are
smoking,
just
underage drinking, underage weed. Everything you got to be above board, be an adult.
Yep,
That's
full
right. You
circle.
don't want to end up.
And
You
we
don't
all
want to end
know
up
from
like Uncle Lou
experience
or any of
because
us.
we all know how it affected us as adults by starting so young.
I was just
Anyway.
going to say that was where we started. I was a Tasmanian devil as a child, and I really don't want my small human following in my footsteps.
Yeah,
Right. So we advocate
I'm in the same page.
adult use of everything.
That's right. I don't need my 13-year-old doing what I did, and she will drive
No.
me up a wall.
Okay, Kristen. So, what do we
Yes.
got going on in the corner? Is there anything happening this week? We're getting close to the holidays.
This week, I did not see anything. I'm trying to pull up the date right now, but you might have this on your list. I know there's going to be a puff and paint at Burn and Learn coming up. Sarah from C Creations is hosting that. So the tickets are available on Burn and Learn's website, and I do not have the date in front of me, so we will get that. But y'all can definitely check out burnandlearnct.com. They have their whole calendar of events, and that puff and paint will be on there.
All right. Well, I have Blazed and Glazed. It is tomorrow down in Brantford, hosted by Better Ways, but it is actually at a place called Fired Up, which is right down the street from Better Ways, where Duncan is. So that is tomorrow night. That is where a pottery, where you get blazed and you make pottery. So it should be fun. That you can find out more about that through Better Ways, but that is on the on Facebook. You can see that. Also, I have on the 14th, we have a seed swap, which is also down at Better Ways. Better Ways seems to be doing a lot of cool little events. This is seed swap, the CT seed swap. It's the 14th. That's this Saturday, I believe. And that's from 12 to 3. And there's a bunch of genetics people there. I can't name them all because there's so many, but check out Better Ways LLC. And you can check out the Connecticut Seed Swap. That'll be this Saturday. And then this Sunday, Burn and Learn also has their Mingle and Jingle Winter Holiday Party, which goes from 12 to 4, I believe, in the afternoon. And they are collecting Christmas cards for underprivileged children and stuff. So if you want to bring down not a gift card or anything, just a Christmas card, Merry Christmas, bring it on down. And they'll be doing that all the way through the 22nd. But yeah, that's their, holiday party. That's the 15th at the Burn and Learn Center on the 4th. And there are a ton of events going on with Salt and Oil Yoga. And she's going to come on next week and tell us what they all are. But if you want to check out some yoga and cannabis events, go to saltandoilyoga.com. And she'll be a little special guest, little segment next week. So now that's all I have. And that's really it. But I also see that we have our esteemed guest has joined us. Look at him with that cool mic and everything, man. He's gotten professional. Let me give a great intro to our guest coming up right now, Mr. Jason Ortiz. Jason is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Last Prisoner Project. He, after graduating from the University of Connecticut with a degree in public community engagement, he is one of the 4 founding board members of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, where he empowered legacy entrepreneurs of color to become policy advocates through organizing of 5 cannabis policy summits that brought together dozens of stakeholders of color to draft the model social equity legislation. In his home state of Connecticut, Jason was a founding member of Connecticut United for Reform and Equity, which is CURE, and led the drafting of 2021's HB 6377, an act creating equitable and modern cannabis workforce, which was ultimately incorporated into Connecticut's cannabis legal framework. After ending prohibition in his home state, Jason took his skills to the national level and was the immediate director of Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And in addition to his drug policy activism, Jason sits on the board of Connecticut Working Families and has served as president of the Connecticut Puerto Rican Agenda, where he organized for economic justice on his home island of Puerto Rico. Jason, welcome. I just had to go through that. Everybody knows who you are. And I even stumbled a couple
Sounds so
times.
good. I really appreciated the Puerto Rico, the
I have
accent.
to,
You know it.
You know it, brother.
I appreciate
You know it. That, to me, is the most important part.
Yes.
But no, actually, Jason, I want to commend you on all the hard work you've been doing, and you've been very active out there, and you know, a very profound face of this drive to release the cannabis prisoners, free the prisoners, and you're really getting on Joe Biden and his administration, getting on their butts to kind of come through with what they kind of promised 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
I know they've done a couple little things like breadcrumbs. But you're saying, listen, man, you promised this 4 years ago. You got about a month left in office. Why don't you go out on a nice note instead of pardoning everybody? Why don't we really give some good pardons, you know, some real pardons out to people who deserve it? And I want to commend you. Tell us a little bit, how's that going? What are you doing to push this guy? Not guy. I'm sure it's not even him.
This guy.
Really, realistically, it's not
Guy.
him. It's who's ever pulling the strings there. But what are you pushing the puppeteers to do to make this happen before he gets out of office?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I'm good to see you, Kristen, and everybody on the Cannabis Corner family. It's always a pleasure to be here. And we're doing a lot of different things. So to be clear, folks can go to cannabisclemency.org. And you'll see we have an actual countdown. There's just over 40 days left for the president to take action. You'll also be able to see the video where 4 years ago, when he was running for president, he made it very clear that his promise was we have to decriminalize marijuana, period. Anyone who has a record should be let out of jail, records expunged. We need to let everybody out, records expunged. That was Joe Biden's quote in the debate when he was facing off against Cory Booker, who was pushing him on the issue of legalization. And so for some context, Joe Biden was one of the architects of the 1994 crime bill that created a lot of the really heavy sentences that we're dealing with today.
3 strikes, right?
Yeah, well, yes. Well, 3 strikes, he didn't invent it, but it expanded and exceeded the punishments for everything, right? And so the idea of 3 strikes had been around for a little while. There's also another bill in the 80s that he was also specifically influential into. So there's been a body of work, I'll say, on President Biden's history for locking people up for a very long time. And so the laws that we're talking about today are the ones that he drafted. So there is a very direct link to President Biden's legacy as somebody that locked up hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
His vice president too.
And he was absolutely for sure, right? Like he's not alone. Let me make that very clear.
No.
In his effort. However, he is currently the president, so he does have a unique power to undo the damage that he was, at least start to undo that damage by using his pardon authority. The broad term is clemency. Clemency is anytime we give retroactive relief to folks that were either currently incarcerated or previously incarcerated. And so to be clear, we're asking for commutations, and a commutation is when you shorten the sentence of somebody that's currently in prison so that they get let out, right? So for example,
their time served, basically, right?
Correct. So as a good example, Edwin Rubiz is a Guatemalan man who was arrested for trafficking, for selling. He was actually just moving the cannabis around, and he was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for that charge. Nonviolent drug offense. He's been, relatively, safe and nonviolent while he's been incarcerated, and he's served 27 years already of that 40-year sentence. Right. He has a son that's 27 years old. When he got arrested, the son was in his mama's belly. Right. So Edwin has been incarcerated for his entire son's life, never been able to have a Christmas with him, never been able to be out there to celebrate a birthday. And so what we're asking President Biden to do is to commute his sentence to time served. He's already served nearly 3 decades for a trafficking charge that is right now quite legal for a lot of folks across the country, including in Washington, D.C. There are folks currently in Washington, D.C. paying taxes to the city of DC and to all these other efforts and, different types of funds with cannabis tax dollars who have done far more in sales and trafficking than Edwin has. So there is both this tension, this hypocrisy that folks are currently incarcerated while other folks are making millions. But there's also the direct link to President Biden being the architect of this madness, who now has the ability to do something about it. So
repent.
So that's the why are we pushing on President Biden, as hard as we are. And in the how, that has been really fascinating for me. I've never been in a situation where my goal was to pressure a president to do something so specifically in a lame duck session. And traditionally, presidents use that pardon power at the very end of their term, like literally the day before that they leave office. Although this president decided to use his pardon authority a little early for his son, Hunter Biden, right? So he's clearly willing to buck the history.
Pardon people.
Right, prior to the last minute. But we have been meeting with the White House. We've had multiple meetings with White House officials, and they basically have told us, we hear you loud and clear. Our last meeting, they made it very clear, like, yep, we heard you. So the advocacy is definitely working, right? And they have told us that we're looking at the different cases that you've presented to us, but we're not going to be able to give you much information on who may get a pardon, who may not, until it happens, right? So I'm in this weird spot of the White House is saying we heard you loud and clear, but I can't trust that they're going to just do what we want. So we have to continue to apply pressure. The best way to get to the president and all of Congress is through the media, right? So we've been really pushing to do a lot of interviews like this, right? I was recently on Democracy Now! To talk about it. And so those are the efforts I think that will get to them. And I have seen an upswell of different types of media pieces on pardons, right? Like obviously the Hunter Biden pardon escalated this issue in all kinds of ways. And the Hunter Biden pardon happened just after we had a congressional press conference with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and we were joined by Representative Jim Clyburn, who's a big supporter of President Biden, asking him to expand his use of clemency powers. So there have been a few weeks here where there has been a lot of pressure, both congressionally, from the media, from his own actions, to really lift this idea of like, what is a pardon power? What is commutation? What is clemency? And so over the last few weeks, he's definitely been feeling the heat, particularly on this issue. And it was Press Secretary St. Pierre, the Biden's press secretary, recently said, you can expect more actions on clemency in the near future. Now, that's great. That's hopeful, right? Who they want to pardon could be all over the place, right? There's some other groups that are also very worthy, folks that are on death row, folks that are innocent and have not actually been proven to have committed their crimes. Some folks, what's called compassionate release, is folks generally speaking that are very old, right? So they might be 70 plus, they might be dealing with a serious health issue. Right. Folks that are ill, folks that like maybe aren't going to last that much longer. Those folks should also be commuted and or pardoned, right? And so there's a lot of different groups vying for some sort of action from the president. The frustrating thing with all of this is he could pardon everybody, right? He could, if he wanted to, say, all of y'all are deserving. You're more deserving than my son was.
Why not?
Right? And so
go out on a blaze of glory.
And that's the struggle as an organizer, just like, come on, like just do the right thing, right? And no insight really on like how they're going to make that decision, right? There's all kinds of internal workings. There's also just time, right? You need folks in the White House pushing for things to happen, or they just don't happen. And so we're running out of time. We have 40 days left. So I'm hopeful that he will make some sort of action before the holidays, really fix, at least in part, his legacy as someone that really created mass incarceration, and that we will see some folks be let home for their families. On a state level, we actually just did get Deshaun Durham out of a Kansas prison, and so he was released, and now his family will have him home for the holidays. And so we've seen governors be willing to take action. Governor Wes Moore, and I was there for this action as well, actually pardoned 175,000 cannabis charges in one fell swoop with one stroke of a pen. Got to see the actual stroke of the pen happen. But I will be clear that even Governor Moore, no one got released from that. That was folks that had charges on their records from the past, which it will still be helpful, right? Like they can now apply for jobs they couldn't have before. They can apply for housing in a more strong way, right? So there's a lot of things that are beneficial there, but we haven't seen the real grappling with what we did with the war on drugs, saying that was wrong and letting people out. That's what we're really fighting for. And that's what we're going to keep pushing on Biden until he does it.
Right. And this is not something a bill through Congress or anything can do. This is down to the president, down to him. That's it.
Yep.
So you're going after one guy.
One guy. And so I've said before that sometimes it feels like I'm trying to make a corpse sign a piece of paper, right? Like, I'm like, how do you do that? Right? Like, I don't really know how to make
gotta go after Jill. Go
right?
to Jill.
Or Hunter. So this is the funniest thing, right? Like, as this is all happening, I was like, you know who might be our best spokesperson right now? It's Hunter Biden, right? Hunter Biden is clearly down with drug policy reform. I feel like he'd fit right in one of the cannabis conferences, you know? He's got a direct line to the president. He's justice impacted, right?
Do it for people like your son so they don't.
It would be cool if Hunter came around and was just like, listen, Dad, this whole thing is madness, you know, is messed up that I got targeted, but there are lots of other folks that got targeted. Just let him out, man. Just do the whole thing, right? And like, he could do that. Like, whether he feels inspired to do that yet, right, is going to be on us. Everybody go tweet at Hunter and be like, yo, come on, help us out.
Nobody even knows where he is.
And that's okay. He doesn't need to say it publicly. He's got to tell his dad at the Christmas table, like, listen, Dad. And so, you know, but I think the chorus of folks that are coming out to support this issue is growing every day, right? Like Jim Clyburn is a very prominent congressman from Carolina, right, who has come out on the side of expanded use of clemency powers. And so we've won the national conversation on this. We're even winning the congressional conversation on this. And it's really hard to find like who's actually opposed to doing this. And that's where it gets a little frustrating, right? Because I can keep yelling at the White House over and over again, but if I don't know which levers to actually pull or which people are making the decisions, you know, I could just be banging my head against a wall. You know, even though the wall tells you you're doing a great job, right? It doesn't mean that it's actually working. And so we just have to keep escalating until they're out and be ready to do it again when the next president comes in.
And then that's what I want to talk to you about next, because I'm sure you're probably planning already. You know, let's say he doesn't do it, or even if he does, you know what I mean? You still got to have obviously you're going to continue your work state by state. But obviously, what is the strategy going forward with this new administration? And a lot of people say, "Oh, Trump, he's a Republican," and all that. But you got to look around the people he's got around him.
Sure.
You got RFK Jr.
We are, Joe. We are.
Elon Musk, right? Who are former Democrats, but who also, I believe, would be very open to cannabis reform in some way, legal cannabis reform, especially RFK being in charge of, let's say, FDA.
Sure.
You know, so what? And I know your focus mainly is on getting people released, but you are also a cannabis activist.
Sure.
What would be the strategy moving forward to get them to move forward on some of this? Because we know you're not going to get any kind of descheduling or any of that out of Biden. But at least you're going to, if you can get the releases, that's a good thing. So what would it be with this next administration? Do you think there's actual shot at getting descheduling through? And if there was, how would you go about doing it?
Yes, first of all. And I also say, like, yeah, I do focus on the criminal justice side and getting folks out of prison. But the number one way that we're going to get to the last prisoner is to decriminalize and fully legalize, right? Like, we're still putting people in prison. So I do think that decriminalization at the federal level, full descheduling, full legalization, however you want to phrase it, is going to be the action that makes it most likely we're able to get all the state prisoners out, right? Like, that is the thing that could happen that would radically shift at the state level. How to get everybody out, right? So that's why at the core of the Last Prisoner Project, we are pushing for decriminalization, like broadly, because that is what is going to be necessary for folks that are in Republican districts, Republican governors to say, all right, this is done, right? We're going to let folks out. There's at least half the country, I think, that won't really do it until that happens. Some governors even said explicitly, I ain't doing anything until there's federal.
Until the feds. Right? And they say that about legalization of weed in their state as well.
Sure.
We ain't touching it until the feds say something.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think, again, like all the other pieces aside, that is always and should always be all of our goal. That is the one thing that I can actually accomplish all of our goals, whether it be industry side, criminal justice side, patient access side, all of it is benefited by full legalization. And that was the premise for the Unity Week of Action that we did this year was that the one thing that brings all the different groups of cannabis advocates together is full legalization. So we should be pushing for that, whether there's a Democrat administration or Republican administration or something else, right? And so that body, that group of people that came together was created strategically to be able to operate in a Republican legislature so that we have folks that are conservatives and Republicans or libertarians that can be the messenger to the Republican Party, right? The fascinating thing about this new Congress that's coming in, Republicans will control both the House and the Senate and the presidency, right? So they have a trifecta. They can move whatever they want. In a very weird turn of fate, President Trump is one of the more progressive Republicans on cannabis.
Agreed.
He said he would he would vote for the Florida legalization bill, problematic as it was, right? But he said, yeah, like, I think it doesn't make sense to be locking people up in Florida if people in other states are doing it legally, right? He said that. So it's actually not Trump that's the problem at all. And you actually pointed to some of his appointments. I would say Elon Musk has smoked on air, and he's even down with psychedelic reform as well, right? RFK is actually the director of HHS, Health and Human Services, which is bigger than the FDA. It actually, the FDA is one part of it. Also, very much a fan of cannabis as medicine and, pretty strongly anti-big pharma. Then you also have folks like Joe Rogan, right? Who's like clearly an influencer when it comes to the Trump administration, and all of the UFC folks that are also pro-legalization, right? So our issue is not the president at this point. I have other personal issues with who he is and what he wants to do outside of cannabis, right? But this situation is really going to be about Republican leadership in the House and the Senate. Right. And so we have Speaker Johnson and Senate President Thune that are going to be coming in as the Republican leadership. So we can't get anything passed in either house unless those guys let it happen, right? Now, that being said, even in the last admin, it wasn't like President Biden was a big ally either. So it's not like we're going from this really fertile ground for change to this like really dystopian situation. We're going from really difficult to also really difficult. That being said, this is going to be a time for our conservative folks, our Republicans, our folks that are libertarians, right? Where your folks are in power, independents, right? Like, you get to rise to the occasion and speak why folks that are not Democrats support legalization, right? One of the fascinating parts of all of this conversation is where hemp lies in all of this.
Yes,
and
right.
The political split between folks that are like regulated cannabis being more Democrat centric, right? And at least the states, and then folks that are more hemp focused tend to lean more GOP. So there is a blue-red kind of line going through it. And there are, thousands of legal hemp businesses that are currently operating in the South in places like Texas and Florida that are dealing with federal interference. Texas is a really good example. If you're a hemp operator in Texas, they are raiding, right? So someone's saying to President Biden, we need some protection from this nonsense, because it was under Trump that the farm bill that legalized hemp products was passed. Right. And so I think folks forget that sometimes, that it was under Trump that one of the biggest acts of legalization that's ever happened in our history through the farm bill happened. And it was also under Senator Mitch McConnell's leadership. So these are folks that I would not have put on, like our allies list, but it legalized seeds, it legalized clones, it created the, obviously, abstract 0.03% rule, right? All the THC loophole, THCA loophole, right? All of that is going to have to get addressed in the next farm bill, which is going to come up, right? Next year, if not the following year. And that is going to be a wild conversation to have. Are we going to adjust anything? Are we going to change anything? Are we going to close the THC loophole? You could fix a lot of problems if you just rose the percentage of THC in a hemp plant that is legal, right? If we went from 0.03% to 30%, all of a sudden, like, all the cultivation becomes legal in one tweak, right? So there's a lot of ways that we could go about doing this that aren't necessarily passing a full legalization bill through Congress, although that is the ideal situation. And so we're looking at it from all these different angles, right? How do we work Congress to actually move something? How do we latch on to the conversations around hemp in the farm bill? And then, of course, how do we pressure the president, right, to use his authority to let folks out directly. And the interesting thing about Trump is like, he's not particularly ideological. Like, he's not going to say like, I'm not going to do this because my conservative values tell me I can't do this. Right.
No.
It's more about whether he's going to feel like he's cool for doing it or not. Right. And so getting a lot of celebrities on board to be able to say, this is what we need you to do, et cetera. Right. It's just a very different vibe with Trump. But that being said, I'm sure there are GOP, and conservative leaning celebrities that can reach out to and just say like, hey man, this is the one thing that you could do that's relatively easy for you. There's almost no negative consequence for doing it, help us out. And so if Joe Rogan, if Elon, if Kid Rock wants to hop on board, right? Like whoever these folks are, I'll take them as allies if it means we're going to get people out of prison.
I gotta think, with Trump, if you stroke his ego enough and tell him, man, imagine you being the president who legalized weed. Oh my God, you'd go down in history as immortal, the greatest guy.
Think of the smack talk.
I'm telling you.
Think about how much he could smack talk Biden specifically, right? Like it is wild that Biden is ceding this issue to, the next generation, but like, man, for Trump to come in and be the guy that undoes the damage done by President Biden himself, like that's a very powerful.
Who's pitching it to him, man? Somebody's got to get in there and pitch
and
it
people,
to him like
there
that.
definitely are, and like shout out to Weldon Angelos. He's somebody that has been working with the Trump administration because he was actually pardoned under the Trump administration. He was let out of prison by Obama, but fully pardoned by Trump. And so he was somebody that is currently talking to, and in a while,
Roger Stone.
Roger Stone's another one. Yep. So actually, Ivanka Trump was one of the people most involved with Trump's pardons. So folks, 4 years ago, Trump actually pardoned more folks than Biden has to actually let him out of prison. But it was Ivanka Trump and what's her name? She's so famous. I'm forgetting her name now. Kanye's old girlfriend.
Kim Kardashian.
Kim Kardashian. Yeah. I know that's Kanye's girlfriend, but like Kim Kardashian, like shout out to Kim, like her and Ivanka actually got a dozen people out of prison, right? And so there are definitely folks within, his circle. How we get in there right away, we'll see. It's a bit of a different time than it was 4 years ago, but I will say the movement is tackling this from every angle we possibly can.
Yeah, and I think the movement around cannabis has also gotten much larger with a few more legal states over the last 4 years. I believe the groundswell might almost be there. We're almost at 50%. We
are at 51% of the people in the country live in a legal or adult use state, I should say, right? But not 51% of the states, right? Because states like New York and California have way more than their fair share than like the Dakotas and things like that.
Population, right?
And we've seen, so like Florida did get above 50%, but didn't hit the 60 threshold to pass, right? So that still means that the majority of people that are voters in Florida voted yes. And so that is a pretty red state to vote yes on, right? But you did have both of the Dakotas fail. A lot of the other cannabis initiatives did fail across the country. And so, there's lots of reasons why I think those happened, but we are, I would say, past critical mass as far as population goes. But the big one I do think is Ohio, right? Ohio is a very red state. That's where JD Vance is from, right? Like, right. And JD Vance is not on board with us quite yet. But Ohio, now we have a fully red state that has 2 Republican senators. I'm pretty sure all Republican, maybe not one, but like almost all of their Congress people are Republicans. So what we need to do is look at the states that have Republican-led Congress people, congressional delegations, but also have adult use, right? We're asking you to vote for the whole country to have the same freedom that your state voted yes for, right? And I do think that is where we start, right? Like
that's a great strategy.
We have 200 Republicans we have to talk to. We're going to talk to them all, right? But if I had to prioritize, it's going to be folks that are Republicans that live in a red, not necessarily a red state, an adult use state, because there's also, for example, like Republicans in New York State, right? That like the state is blue, but there are GOP reps that represent certain areas, and those are the folks that we should start with.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that sounds like a great strategy on a federal level.
That's why they made me the director of strategic initiatives.
You are the man, dude. And look, we wouldn't have legalization here without you. Let's be real. I'm going to call it right out. So now speaking of Connecticut.
Sure. Yeah.
Now we got a few minutes left. Let's turn our attention to this state. And Kristen, I want you in on this because, and I haven't got a chance to look at it yet, but Connecticut did release some regulations that they want to put in, and they've opened up a public testimony. I want you to talk a little bit about that, and both of you, I'm sure you've read it, Jason.
I have not actually.
Okay, so Kristen, tell us a little bit about
Hmm.
what's going on with this public
Yeah.
testimony period for the state of Connecticut, and what are they proposing for the state in new regulations in cannabis?
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing. Admittedly, it's many, many pages. I kind of glossed over it. I haven't done a deep dive, but high level, the Department of Consumer Protection has opened up a public testimony period that you can submit online. It's open now through January 10th, I believe. So right as Connecticut session kicks off, they will have all of this testimony available to them. What they are proposing is tweaks to our legislation bill, RURACA, and this is one of the I think this is the last year that they will really be making any changes to that before codifying it. A lot of what is in there is more industry specific from what I gathered, as opposed to there's nothing in there about caregiver bills. There's not really anything in there about any justice relief, but it does have things that would definitely benefit consumers, patients, small businesses. So some of it would be around and it's such bizarre things. Like there's very, very strict rules in Connecticut about disposal of product. And I only know enough to sound stupid, but Massachusetts is far more lenient with that. So folks that have a dispensary and need to get rid of one product may need to get rid of all of it. So there were different things around diversion of product down to like leaf and trim and things like that. They were treating it like it was biohazard before. And now if this goes through, it would be a little bit easier to just throw it away. It's a plant, it's a leaf. Things in there about child safety. Now, admittedly, I want to read through that one because it sounds great on the surface, but I don't know what exactly they're doing. I mean, we already have child-proof containers. You have to be 21 plus to enter. So I'm not exactly sure what that part entailed. And then it would be things around grow rights. But again, I believe that's for licensed cultivators. So it's definitely interesting. And I think it'll certainly help. I mean, we know we live in Connecticut. Like right now we have lottery and social equity applicants. I'm preaching to the choir here to some degree, but it's been very challenging for folks to open. We really are still very much looking at a lot of the same businesses just opening duplicates. It's the same cultivators. So I believe the intent is to make it easier for folks like, not to pick on Lou, but like, you know what I mean? Someone like Lou, to make it a little easier and cost effective. That being said, I think some of these things are coming a little late, where people that are getting ready to open have probably already spent money doing the things that are in place now. But I do think it's really important to read through this. We can scatter some information in future shows, and I don't know if anyone has anything they want to add to it, but I do think it's important for folks to testify, to read through it, to get some information on it and put that through. I personally am not a fan of AI testimony. I think it just reads like a robot. Use it like Wikipedia, get like a little bit of info, but
they're starting to catch on to it too. They do.
Throw your own thoughts and feels in there. And there's a lot to go with like human touch. How did certain things affect you? How will it affect you?
Sure.
And I know Erin Kirk Gorman has said that there are some concerns she has about wanting to allow the cultivators. Right now, they sell differently to the medical side and the rec side. It wants to be more of a combined effort. Her concern is that that's actually going to deplete the supply from the medical side. So it's really important to not just do generic testimony, because you may inadvertently be supporting something that you don't actually support.
One of my big things is everybody needs to go out, testify, take part in local government. You will be absolutely shocked how much local government has to do with actually getting things out there. They can change, as crazy as this sounds is, they can change all the laws at the state level, but if your town doesn't allow more than X amount of cannabis operations in a space where they haven't even defined it properly, because if the wording is, we allow X amount of cannabis and smoke shops or cannabis businesses or cannabis adjacent businesses. Now you may have one manufacturing facility, one cultivation, one dispensary, and you've already knocked out half of the locations that you can even get into the space. Or if they have a moratorium all right out from allowing it. Local government.
Well, where I live, they don't allow it.
The simple things of how it's zoned, cultivation is under manufacturing. So trying to get any space for cultivation is really hard because now you have to be in a manufacturing zone, which isn't necessarily open land to cultivate. Opening up, this has been, I'm 3 years going with nothing open. So I've had a license for 3 years and I have nothing open. So the trials and tribulations of how things, and some people have 12 licenses, 10 licenses, 5 licenses, and they're popping up all over the place.
And they're getting open real quick.
Yeah. So, and I'll say quickly too, like on the other than business side, because Lou's 100% correct on the business side. On the how do we roll this out equitably? I was recently on Jocelyn Serda's podcast, and so if folks want to check that, I kind of gave a breakdown of all the different types of equity policies that make sense. Let's not forget about the community investment and criminal justice side of the cannabis industry. This last year, the Social Equity Council failed to distribute $40 million in community investment dollars that we all got set aside. We fought very hard for that money.
Yes, we did.
And then that money it got appropriated. So like pat on our shoulders for doing our job. But then when it came time to just give it to the people, right, they failed to do that. And so I think as you're going through testimonies, one, make sure you talk about making sure that the community investment funds get released, which now is Brandon McGee. So folks should definitely contact Brandon McGee as the new executive director there. But don't limit your comments to whatever the proposed legislation is, right? Like you can talk about all aspects of the cannabis space and make recommendations for projects, programs that they haven't considered yet, right? Like don't let them box you in and say like, oh, we propose these 8 changes. Just talk to us about that. Bring in all the changes that you really want to talk about. So again, you can check out my podcast with Jocelyn, who is an equity owner. We talk a lot about the details of what those cannabis funds can and should be used for. But I think as folks start to look into how this rolls out in the future, that Social Equity Council can do a lot of good for a lot of people that may or may not be in the space for the business side of it. It could also help the business owners as well. So that entity could use a lot of love, a lot of interest, a lot of support. Folks should reach out to Brandon and support his efforts.
Right, new leadership, much more receptive. Brandon is a totally different person.
Absolutely. And Brandon was there when we were arguing about all of this, right? Like he was one of the folks pushing in 2019 back when D'Agostino's bill was the big thing. And so, I just want folks to think about that. There's millions of dollars sitting in an account right now that we all fought to go to our communities. Let's get that money out. Let's get some really cool examples. I have some ideas, cool things they could do with it, but it really should be things that are, actual structural change, building new institutions, building resources that folks don't currently have, right? I have, definitely some ideas there, but I think that's the real presence that we need to unwrap.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I would not have thought about to put in a testimony. You know what I mean? But I'm glad you brought that up, and I hope our listeners understand. $40 million. Oh yeah, again, is being held up.
Yeah,
that should be going out.
You don't use it; it could get swept back to the general fund, right?
Like, right, and then who knows where it's going to go, right?
That was exactly when that happened. When the switch happened, we had a nice big conversation about that.
Yep.
And then to piggyback off of that, one of the tough things is before you're able to open, you can't start doing any of your social equity work. They actually penalize you for starting to do your community engagement. I went, and it's something that actually gets held against you. So, it's tough. And these are those conversations that need to be brought up because the ones who are suffering are the ones who are still being arrested.
Yep.
Ones who are not getting the funds that have been allocated for it. We're still seeing arrests happen for under the legal limit. So, a quarter pound found in a car, that arrest is still happening, even though you're allowed to have X amount with you, so it's a tough battle. And show up, everybody just show up. And if there's everybody there, it's a lot better than having nobody there. And it's all too often that we go to these meetings and it's the same 10 or 15 people,
Yeah, it's true. And now making it online and available for a long period of time till January 10th means that anybody, any consumer, any medical patient, anybody who has that link can submit testimony. So if we can get the word out, Kristen, do you happen to have the website?
Yeah, it's the e-regulations portal. I posted something on LinkedIn with the link, but we can share it on our own social media channels and really help get the word out. I don't know the exact one, but it's the Connecticut e-regulations site. So if you go to ct.gov or just type CT e-regulations in your search bar, it should pull it. And then it gives you, it's a relatively short list of other initiatives non-cannabis related, but if you scroll, it's like the fifth or sixth one down, and then it's got all the hyperlinks so you can kind of see the progress that has been made thus far, and then the document that shows all the definitions and what it is that they're looking to modify or change.
So I think it's important we get that link out there, so
Yeah.
let's make sure we share that link, all of us, because, right, this is unusual. This is Jason, when we never had this opportunity, right? We had to drive up there and they have special hearings. I mean, it makes it a lot easier. So let's take advantage of it.
Sure. Yeah, I would say we had to force some of these opportunities into being. And so we definitely had opportunities. But, and everybody should take advantage of this, but it does not replace physically going up to the Capitol.
That's right. There still will be hearings.
It's
and
yes
things.
And, right? So, use this opportunity to practice what you want to say to the legislature. And then, again, when the legislature is open, make sure you actually bring your testimony to the public hearing.
Follow up on it.
Right, exactly. Because it only happens when you're continuously fighting for things. But I think the important thing for everyone is to sort of pick what exactly the battle is that you want to push on and not try to fight every single battle all at the same time. That sometimes can be exhausting for folks where they don't know where to move or, what to include or say the right thing or the wrong thing. And I would really just encourage folks to think about which aspect of the space you're most passionate about and put all of your effort in making one point very well. Right. That is going to be more powerful and more helpful to the movement than 1,000 people just repeating weak talking points over and over again. We need powerful messengers with stories about real impact to their lives and their communities, and then bringing actual concrete changes you would like to see. I think that's the other piece I would recommend, folks. Don't say I'm opposed to bad laws and I support good laws without putting in actual specific actions that the legislature can take to move on things. So whether that's supporting a particular bill or I want to see this law changed from this to a very explicit thing, right? Like write out what you think the law should actually say so that they can then take that to their legal teams to actually adopt these different pieces. Far too often, we just come in and say, you guys are all bad, politicians are all evil, just do what we want. And then we leave them with nothing to actually move on. And that's where different types of lobbyists will come in and say, well, do what we want, right? Because we actually wrote it down for you. So find out what you're personally passionate about, what your personal story is a good messenger for, and then actually dig into the details of what you would like to see. Don't leave it up to them to figure it out for you.
Right. And we know from experience, sometimes you actually have to write the bill for them.
The whole thing. Yeah, 40 pages of language. And, I think the easiest, what I have found the easiest for me in doing that type of work is find a place in the country that has the type of policy you want to see and say, do it like that. So if you think Washington State has really good farmers market laws, or you think Maine has really good caregiver policies, right? Saying, why don't we change our policies to match that of Maine is a much easier recommendation for them to move on than I want to see a caregiver program, right? Because the people that are actually writing the laws can call the people in Maine and say, what exactly did you guys do to make this work? And then that's where we're actually getting towards good policy.
Right. All right, Jason, we're about to wrap it up. Why don't you give out your social media, how people can reach you, get involved in Last Prisoner Project and all that good stuff?
For sure. So definitely the first thing, please go to cannabisclemency.org, send the president a letter. We have about 40 days left to do that. Also, if you know anyone that's currently incarcerated for a cannabis crime, please get them our information. We can help folks by supporting them financially with commissary funds while they're in there, right? There's all kinds of actions that are coming up here soon. I want to shout out Duncan and Better Ways, who's doing a seed swap that's going to benefit commissary funds for folks. So definitely check that out here in Connecticut. That'd be a great way to help us. And then lastly, Jason at lastprisonerproject.org, or just go to our website, lastprisonerproject.org, to find all of our different campaigns, because we have lots going on. And I'll say just lastly, our holiday letter writing campaign, Stephanie Shepard, who's our board chair, leads that. If you would like to write a letter to folks that are currently incarcerated, please check it out. It's on our Take Action page. And I'm sure we'd love to have anyone in Connecticut, anyone across the country that's listening. Those letters make a huge difference to the folks that are in. And so let's make it a little bit easier for them while they're in there until we get every single one of them out.
All right, Jason, man. Thanks again for everything that you do. Lou?
Pleasure as always.
Man, Jason, thank you so much. And Mano, you're always fighting the fight on multiple coasts and multiple places. We absolutely love you, bro.
Love you all too. It's an honor.
Yeah.
All right.
You're a leader and a partner and an inspiration, as well as somebody who really come up, grab your hand, and say, "Let's go do it together." So we really
That's
appreciate
right.
you.
That's right, Jason.
We did. And we're
Yeah,
gonna keep
We
doing
did.
it.
We did. That's right. Much love to you,
Yeah.
Jason.
And
Much
care,
so,
love.
Jason, we love having you here, and every time we can have you here, we will. Every single time.
Yeah, next time we'll be from Puerto Rico. We'll talk Puerto Rico politics.
All right.
All
Yeah.
about it.
We got to get them
Field
legal
trip.
now.
Group trip, we're doing it. For our listeners, Joe, Kristen, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. For our listeners, stay happy, healthy, and high.
All right. We'll see you all next time. Kristen, any last words?
It's a tough act to follow. No, great episode today. Thank you, Jason, and have a great week, everyone.
All right. Everybody, thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe at Greenhaven Media. You can follow me at Joe the Weed Guy. And please have a great week. We'll see you all next week. Support the Seed Swap. Support the Burn and Learn holiday party. And take care. We'll see you next week. Thanks again to Jason Ortiz. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Lou. We love you. Keep it green.